I am going to walk you through my process from when I get a quilt, how I clean it and repair it, to eventually what I turn it into. So, and this is our subject quilt. I got this a few weeks ago. It is stinky and it's got some stains. A few you can see on the front, but really much more significant on the back. That is not as important for my uses because most of my bags I do line, and it does have some holes, some periodic holes through it. That said, I love this quilt. I love the different fabrics along the border. I think that's just really, really pretty. I love how bright it is. I'm a fan of triangles and flying geese, so I love that there are flying geese incorporated into this. I don't know the name of the pattern. If you do, tell me, please comment below. And so what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna start cleaning this quilt, and I'll take you along on that journey, and then we'll go to my studio and we'll cut it up and make some fun things with it. So we're down here in my basement, my sort of grungy basement, matches the quilt, and I will be soaking this in my slop sink down here. I use warm to hot water, and I use a detergent called Restoration. I also use Retro Clean and Retro Wash. I believe they're of a similar formulation, and they're specifically for vintage textiles. So they're gentle, and they do a really great job of getting that 100 years of dust and grime out of the quilt. So I'm going to fill up the tub and soak this. If the first soaking isn't completely filthy, I will leave it in the tub for 3 to 4 hours before I drain. If the first soaking is really, really dirty, I do drain it immediately. So I just put in enough water to cover the quilt. It doesn't need to be super deep. So, and then I just sort of mush it around. So the first go round, it's grimy, but it's not black. I've had quilts before where the water's just instantly turned black. So I am just gonna let this soak for a few hours, and then I will come back and check on it and change the water and do the process all over again. So my quilt has been soaking for about 24, 28 hours. It's looking really, really good. I am going to drain it and run it through my washing machine on the gentle cycle. So the quilt has been soaked, and it has been put in the washer and dryer, and you can see it is much brighter. Excuse the wind. There's a slight discoloration if you get close up, but really not as bad as it was before. It stayed intact during the washing process. This hole did not get any bigger, but now I am able to see where I do need to make some repairs, where the stitching has come loose. But all in all, it's in good shape for repurposing. This is a small quilt. I don't even think it's a twin size. It doesn't lap over very much on the back, so I don't think I'm able to get a jacket out of this. And honestly, the coloring is such that I think it will look really, really great as bins and caddies. So that's what I hope to do with this quilt. I'll be taking it to m.a.b.e.l, where I'll be cutting it up, and that's the next part. When I'm cutting my bins and caddies, my canvas is pre-cut for me, so I use that as my template or my pattern. And then I just use a rotary blade and the straight edge to make sure I get a good cut. It also helps to have really heavy pattern weights like the irons, those vintage irons that I'm using. Since basically all the pieces are rectangular, I am just doing my best to eliminate as much waste as I can. I also try to cut my pieces from large to small. So what I'm cutting here are the bins, those are my largest, and I will work my way down to the large, medium, and small caddies. I am also guilty of fussy cutting. When there's a particular portion of the quilt that I want to incorporate, I will adjust the pieces slightly on the quilt to make sure I get that special fabric. I'm really thankful for the cutting table at m.a.b.e.l. It's huge, and it really makes a difference when trying to lay out and cut a quilt. I do like to cut the entirety of the quilt in one go. Even if I don't sew everything from it at the same time, I just like to have the projects prepped and planned and in the queue for sewing down the road. All right, and so I am left with these scraps that are going to get tossed. These will go into the rag pile at my makerspace. The woodworkers like to use the quilts when they're buffing their projects, and this I'm going to save because it could turn into something. 2 zip pouches, 1 small maker caddy, 3 large maker caddies, 1 medium maker caddy, and 1, 2, 3, 4 bins. So that's pretty good for 1 quilt and very minimal garbage. So next step is sewing. So I have cut up the quilt. I am ready to sew. I've got the quilt tops, I've got the linings, and I've got the strapping. So let's head on over to the sewing machine. Ready? I start sewing my caddies by attaching the handles. After the handles are attached, I sew down the sides. I do leave space to turn the bag right side out when I'm ready to. I then box all the corners, the 2 of the quilt and 2 of the lining. After boxing the corners, I trim off the excess. I leave about a 1/4 inch seam allowance in each of the corners. I then turn the bag right side out using the opening I left in the lining. It does look like a struggle, but it's really not. I sew the opening shut from the right side of the lining. I press the lining into the bag and then I will top stitch all the way around. I top stitch with the quilt side towards the feed dogs. It just makes it easier for the quilt to feed through the machine. The last step is adding the label. This is always so rewarding. Voila! So there you have it, some of the things that I was able to make out of that smaller than twin size quilt. I have 4 bins, 2 caddies right here. I still have a few caddies and zip pouches left to sew, but you can see that one quilt gives you quite a few things. So if you enjoy content like this, hit the like and subscribe buttons, and also visit my website in the description below. I have lots of tutorials and information about what you can do with your own quilts.